The summer heat shimmered across Falcon's Ridge as Emma Winters inched her way along the crumbling ledge, 30 feet above the jagged rocks below. The wounded German shepherd in her arms whimpered, blood from his matted fur seeping into her faded yellow t-shirt. "Don't look down," she whispered to herself. "Just don't look down." Another piece of rock broke away beneath her sneaker, sending pebbles cascading into the abyss. Emma froze, pressing her back against the cliff face, heart hammering against her ribs. Sheriff Mitchell Brooks slammed his truck door, staring up in horror at the 10-year-old girl dangling precariously above certain death. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, grabbing his rescue rope. "Emma, don't move." But Emma wasn't listening. The dog's amber eyes locked with hers, intelligent, desperate, filled with something that looked impossibly like purpose. "I won't let you die," she promised the animal, just as her grip began to slip. "I won't let them hurt you again." She couldn't have known then that this rescue would uncover the darkest secret in Oak Ridge County's history, or how many children's lives hung in the balance, all connected to the bleeding animal in her trembling arms. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Oak Ridge County wore its reputation like a favorite sweater, comfortable, familiar, and fraying slightly at the edges. Once a thriving logging community, it had transformed into a rural haven for those seeking escape from city life. For Angela Winters, a recently divorced court stenographer, it represented a fresh start for herself and her daughter. Emma Winters wasn't like other 10-year-olds, quiet and observant. She carried an old soul's wisdom in her hazel eyes. The divorce had stolen what little childhood exuberance she'd possessed, replacing it with a watchfulness that unnerved even her mother. She collected wounded things, birds with broken wings, abandoned turtle shells, forgotten stories, as if gathering proof that damaged didn't mean worthless. Their modest 2-bedroom house sat at the edge of town, backing up to the infamous Falcon's Ridge, a limestone cliff that had claimed 3 lives in the past decade. The realtor had conveniently omitted this detail, just as she'd glossed over the troubling history of child disappearances that had plagued Oak Ridge for nearly a decade. Sheriff Mitchell Brooks had investigated each case until the trails went cold. At 53, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen too much, he carried the weight of those unsolved cases like stones in his pockets. 8 years ago, when Tyler Harrison vanished while walking his new puppy, something in Brooks had broken. The boy's German shepherd, Ranger, had been found wandering alone, leash trailing behind him. The puppy had grown into a powerful dog before disappearing himself 3 weeks ago. Dr. Sarah Collins ran the only veterinary clinic in town. Her gentle hands had treated everything from prize cattle to classroom hamsters. At 37, with her practical brown ponytail and no-nonsense approach, she'd built a reputation for straight talk and soft touch. Principal Edward Chambers presided over Oak Ridge Elementary with patrician authority. His silver hair and tailored suits gave him the appearance of a distinguished statesman rather than a small-town educator. His generous donations to local causes had earned him universal respect, the kind that silences questions before they're asked. None of them could have imagined how these disparate lives would collide, or how a wounded dog on a cliff edge would expose the rot beneath Oak Ridge's picturesque surface. Emma first heard the whimpers while hanging laundry on the clothesline. Her mother had left for work an hour earlier, extracting the usual promises: stay inside, lock the doors, Don't answer for strangers, and above all, never go near the ridge. The sound was faint but distinctive, a creature in pain. She tried to ignore it, folding her mother's scrubs with careful precision. The whimpering came again, more desperate this time. Emma set down the laundry basket and walked to the worn wooden fence that marked the boundary between safety and the wild descent toward Falcon's Ridge. "Hello?" she called, her voice small against the vastness beyond. The answering cry was unmistakable. A dog in distress. Emma bit her lip, her conscience warring with her promise. She'd always been the responsible child, the one who followed rules, who never caused trouble. But something about that plaintive cry pulled at her, as if it were calling her name specifically. "I'll just look," she told herself, climbing the fence with practiced ease. "I won't go near the edge." The summer heat pressed down as Emma picked her way through tall grass and scattered limestone. The whimpering grew louder, guiding her forward until she reached a stunted oak that clung to the hillside like a stubborn memory. From there, she could see the ledge and the large shape huddled upon it, a German shepherd, its fur matted with blood, one leg dangling uselessly over the edge. "Oh no," Emma whispered, her heart constricting. The dog raised its head, amber eyes locking onto hers with startling intelligence. It tried to stand but collapsed with a yelp that echoed across the canyon. Emma glanced back toward her house, now seeming miles away rather than yards. She should go back, call for help, wait for adults. But the dog whimpered again, and she knew with terrible certainty that there wasn't time. "It's okay," she called softly. "I'm coming to help you." Boom. The path to the ledge was barely a foot wide in places, loose rock skittering away under her sneakers as she inched forward. Emma kept her back pressed against the cliff face, focusing only on the next step, then the next. Her hands were scraped raw from grabbing at the rough limestone, but she barely noticed. The dog watched her approach with wary hope. As Emma finally reached the ledge, she could see the wound clearly a clean hole through the animal's shoulder, crusted with dried blood. Not an accident. Someone had shot this dog. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, slowly extending her hand. The shepherd sniffed her fingers, then licked them once permission granted. Emma gently examined the wound, relieved to find it had stopped bleeding but worried about infection. Getting back up would be nearly impossible with the dog in her arms, but she couldn't leave him. "We'll figure it out," she promised, her voice steadier than she felt. That's when she heard the truck engine and her name being called. Sheriff Brooks and her mother had arrived simultaneously, their faces twisted with identical expressions of horror as they spotted her on the ledge. "Emma Marie Winters." Her mother screamed, "Don't move a muscle." Sheriff Brooks was already uncoiling a rope from his truck bed. "Stay exactly where you are," he called. "I'm coming down." The rescue took 45 agonizing minutes, first getting a harness down to Emma, then guiding her as she secured the injured dog, then the slow, terrifying ascent with the sheriff bracing them from above. By the time they reached solid ground, Emma's arms and legs were trembling from exertion, and her mother was alternating between tearful relief and furious scolding. "What were you thinking?" Angela demanded, clutching Emma's shoulders. "You could have died. He would have died." Emma answered simply, her focus still on the whimpering animal. Sheriff Brooks knelt beside the dog, his weathered face softening. "This looks like a gunshot wound," he said quietly. "Deliberate, not an accident." Dr. Collins arrived 20 minutes later, her examination quick but thorough. Male German Shepherd, approximately 8 years old. She reported. The bullet went clean through the shoulder muscle. No broken bones, thank goodness. But he's dehydrated and exhausted. She paused, scanning the microchip she'd found embedded between the dog's shoulder blades. Her expression changed. "Mitchell, you need to see this." The sheriff studied the information on her scanner, his face paling. "Are you sure?" "Positive. This is Ranger Tyler Harrison's dog. The one that disappeared 8 years ago when Tyler did." A heavy silence fell. Everyone in Oak Ridge knew about Tyler Harrison, the first child to vanish in what became a string of disappearances over the years. 8 children gone without a trace, despite extensive searches and investigations. "That's impossible," Sheriff Brooks finally said. "Ranger was just a puppy when Tyler disappeared." "Microchips don't lie," Dr. Collins replied. "And look at his collar faded. But that's the Harrison family tag." Emma looked between the adults, sensing the weight of what they weren't saying. "Who's Tyler?" Her mother pulled her closer. "A boy who went missing a long time ago. Honey, we should contact the Harrisons," Dr. Collins said quietly. Sheriff Brooks nodded. "I'll do it. They moved to Indianapolis 2 years ago, but I still have their number." 3 days later, Emma sat on her front porch, watching Ranger sleep in a patch of sunlight. The Harrisons had spoken to Sheriff Brooks by phone, their voices breaking as they learned their son's dog had somehow survived. But they couldn't bear to reclaim him. The memories were too painful, the wound still too raw. Instead, they asked if whoever found him might give him a good home. "He needs a lot of care," Angela had warned her daughter. "And he might have behavioral issues after whatever he's been through." But Emma had already decided. Something about Ranger called to her. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity in his eyes, or the way he followed her from room to room, as if he'd been searching for her his whole life. That night, as thunderstorms rolled across Oak Ridge County, Emma woke to find Ranger standing rigid by her bedside, whining softly, not in fear of the storm, but in warning. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Ranger padded to her window, looking out into the darkness. Emma followed, peering through rain-streaked glass. For just a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing at the edge of their property, watching the house. Then lightning flashed, and there was nothing but empty yard and swaying trees. "It's okay," she told Ranger, stroking his fur. "We're safe." But Ranger didn't settle until dawn, his body a protective barrier between Emma and the door, his eyes fixed on threats only he could see. 3 weeks passed, and summer settled over Oak Ridge County like a warm blanket. Emma's cuts and scrapes healed. But Ranger's obsession with the far corner of the backyard only intensified. Every morning after breakfast, the German Shepherd would limp to the same spot beneath the old maple tree and begin digging, his paws working with desperate urgency until Emma coaxed him away. "He's fixated on something," Dr. Collins observed during Ranger's follow-up appointment. German Shepherds are problem solvers by nature. When they become this focused, there's usually a reason. Emma nodded, stroking Ranger's ears. He keeps digging in the same spot. Mom thinks it's just a rabbit hole. But you think it's something else. Dr. Collins finished, smiling gently. Animals often understand things we don't, especially dogs like Ranger who've been trained for specific purposes. What was he trained for? The Harrisons were training him as a search and rescue dog before Tyler disappeared. They said he had extraordinary scent detection abilities. That night, Emma lay awake, listening to Ranger's restless movements. The moonlight spilled through her window, casting long shadows across her bedroom floor. Outside, a whip-poor Will called mournfully. "What are you trying to find, boy?" she whispered. Ranger lifted his head, ears perked forward, as if he understood the question. His amber eyes seemed to hold an entire universe of secrets. By morning, Emma had made her decision. Her mother would be at the courthouse until evening, a full day of depositions that meant Emma had the house to herself, save for old Mrs. Patterson next door checking in at lunchtime. As soon as her mother's car disappeared down the driveway, Emma retrieved the garden spade from the tool shed. Ranger watched her with keen interest, his tail wagging for the first time since his rescue. "Show me, Ranger," Emma said. "Show me what's so important." The German shepherd led her directly to his digging spot. Pawing at the ground with renewed vigor, Emma began to dig methodically, creating a neat pile of soil beside her growing hole. The July sun beat down mercilessly, but she didn't stop, not even when blisters formed on her palms. 3 feet down, the spade struck something solid with a dull clang. Emma's heart jumped. Carefully, she scraped away the surrounding soil until she revealed the outline of a metal box rectangular, about the size of a shoebox, with a small padlock securing its lid. "What did you find, Ranger?" she whispered. The dog whined, pressing his nose against the box as if urging her to open it. The padlock was old and rusted. After a few attempts with a rock, it broke apart in Emma's hands. She lifted the lid, her breath catching in her throat. Inside, nestled in faded red velvet, were teeth tiny. Pearlescent baby teeth arranged in neat rows. 23 of them. Beneath the macabre collection lay a handwritten list of names, dates, and addresses. Emma's hands trembled as she read the first entry, Tyler Harrison. 42 Sycamore Lane, July 17, 2017. Her eyes scanned down the list, recognizing other names from missing children, posters she'd seen around town and in neighboring counties. Each name had a date beside it, dates spanning 8 years. "Oh my God," Emma breathed, her stomach churning. Ranger growled suddenly, the fur along his spine rising. Emma turned to find Principal Edward Chambers standing at their garden gate, his usual immaculate suit replaced by casual weekend attire. "Well, hello there, Emma," he called, his voice carrying the same friendly authority it held during school assemblies. "Your mother mentioned you might need checking in on." "What have you got there?" Emma's instincts screamed danger. She casually closed the box lid, keeping it partially covered with soil. "Just buried treasure, Mr. Chambers. Ranger keeps digging here." The principal's smile didn't reach his eyes as he unlatched the gate and stepped into the yard. Dogs have remarkable instincts, don't they? Especially ones with history. "You know about Ranger?" Emma asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Chambers approached slowly, his gaze fixed on the partially buried box. "Everyone knows about the Harrison boy's dog. Such a tragedy. Your mother mentioned you'd found him somehow." "On the cliff," Emma replied, subtly pushing more dirt over the box with her foot. "He was hurt." "Yes. I heard." Chambers knelt beside her, close enough that Emma could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. Animals can be so accident-prone, wandering where they shouldn't. Ranger's growl deepened, his body positioning itself between Emma and the principal. Chambers eyed the dog with thinly veiled contempt. "He seems rather protective of you." "He's still recovering," Emma explained, her mind racing. "Dr. Collins says he might be nervous around strangers for a while." Chambers nodded thoughtfully, then gestured toward her excavation. "May I see what you found? I was something of an amateur archaeologist in college." Before Emma could respond, Ranger barked sharply, a warning sound that made Chambers flinch. The man's pleasant expression flickered, revealing something cold beneath. "That's quite a temperamental animal," he said, his voice hardening. "Perhaps you should consider whether he's safe to keep around. After all, if he was involved in whatever happened to the Harrison boy." "He wasn't involved," Emma said firmly. "He was just a puppy." "Even so." Chambers stood, brushing dirt from his knees. "I'm starting a special summer program at the school next week. Academic enrichment for promising students. I'd like you to join us." The invitation felt wrong somehow, like a trap disguised as an opportunity. "I'd have to ask my mom," Emma hedged. "Of course." Chambers smiled, all warmth again. "I'll speak with her myself. In the meantime, be careful with your excavations. You never know what might be buried in old properties like this." After he left, Emma waited until his car disappeared down the road before retrieving the box. With shaking hands, she photographed the contents with her mother's old digital camera, then reburied the box in a different location under the garden shed where Chambers wouldn't think to look. That evening, when Sheriff Brooks stopped by to check on Ranger's recovery, Emma made a decision. While her mother prepared coffee in the kitchen, Emma pulled the sheriff aside onto the front porch. "I need to show you something," she whispered, handing him the camera. "But you can't tell Mom where I got it." Brooks scrolled through the images, his expression growing increasingly grave. "Emma, where did you find this?" "Ranger showed me. He's been trying to dig it up since he got here." The sheriff knelt to her level, his voice low and urgent. "Did anyone else see this box?" Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Principal Chambers came by today. He saw me digging, but not what was inside. He acted weird." Brooks's jaw tightened. "Listen to me carefully. Don't tell anyone else about this. Not your friends, not your teachers, not even your mother yet. And stay away from Principal Chambers. Is it about the missing kids, Tyler and the others?" The sheriff's weathered face showed his internal struggle protecting a child's innocence versus telling necessary truths. "It might be, Emma. And if it is, it's very dangerous information." That night, Emma dreamed of running through dark tunnels, pursued by shadowy figures. In the dream, Ranger led her forward, his fur glowing faintly in the darkness. When she woke gasping at 3 a.m., the German Shepherd was sitting alert beside her bed, watching the window with unwavering vigilance. The next morning, Emma noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. When she mentioned it to her mother, Angela dismissed it as probably belonging to one of Mrs. Patterson's relatives. But Emma saw how Ranger's hackles raised whenever he looked in that direction, and she remembered Sheriff Brooks's warning. Something was happening in Oak Ridge County, something connected to 23 missing teeth, a list of names, and a dog who remembered more than anyone thought possible. As Emma stroked Ranger's fur, she made him a silent promise whatever secrets he was trying to uncover, she would help him bring them into the light. Sheriff Mitchell Brooks sat alone in his office, the blinds drawn against the curious eyes of Oak Ridge. Spread before him were photocopies of Emma's disturbing discovery, 23 teeth, and a list of names that made his blood run cold. 8 years of missing children cases, previously thought to be unconnected, now linked by a single, damning document. He'd spent the night cross-referencing each name. All 23 matched children reported missing within a 100-mile radius of Oak Ridge County. The oldest case was Tyler Harrison, 8 years ago. The most recent, Lily Parnell from neighboring Westfield, had disappeared just 3 months earlier. Brooks rubbed his tired eyes. The implications were staggering. This wasn't a series of random abductions or runaways. This was methodical, organized, and the box had been buried in the Winters' backyard, a property that had stood vacant for years before Angela and Emma moved in. "Who lived there before them?" he muttered, pulling county property records from his desk drawer. The answer made his coffee turn bitter in his mouth. Edward Chambers, from 2015 to 2022. The principal had sold the property shortly after the previous disappearance. Brooks reached for his phone, then hesitated. Accusing the most respected man in Oak Ridge of involvement in child abductions would require more than circumstantial evidence. He needed proof that would stand up in court, and he needed to move carefully to avoid tipping Chambers off. Emma sat at the back of Mrs. Patterson's garden, watching as the elderly woman tended to her prize-winning dahlias. Ranger lay at her feet, his eyes never leaving the old wooden fence that separated the properties. "You got yourself a real guardian there," Mrs. Patterson observed, her wrinkled hands deftly pruning dead blooms. "That dog watches you like you hung the moon." "He was Tyler Harrison's dog," Emma said carefully, watching for the woman's reaction. Mrs. Patterson's hands stilled. "The Harrison boy, the one who went missing." She clucked her tongue. "Land sakes. That was a terrible business. First of many. Sad to say. Did you know him, Tyler? Knew all the Harrisons? Good people. That boy used to help me carry my groceries home from Milligan's store." She straightened, wincing at her arthritic back. "His daddy liked to went crazy after Tyler disappeared, searching day and night. His mama took to bed for nearly a year. Terrible thing for parents to lose a child that way, no closure, no knowing." Emma hesitated, then pressed further. "Mrs. Patterson, did anything strange happen in our house before we moved in?" The older woman's eyes narrowed shrewdly. "Now, why would you ask a thing like that?" "Just curious. Mom says the house was empty for a while." "Not entirely empty," Mrs. Patterson replied, lowering her voice. "That Principal Chambers, he owned it for years. Hardly ever stayed there, though. More like a, what do they call it? Investment property." Emma's heart quickened. "Principal Chambers owned our house." "Indeed he did," Peculiar man, if you ask me. All smiles and handshakes in public, but cold as January when nobody's watching. She leaned closer. Used to hear strange noises some nights. Cars coming and going at odd hours. Did you ever tell anyone? Mrs. Patterson snorted. Who'd listen to an old woman's ramblings besides in my day? We minded our own business. She squinted at Emma. Why all these questions, child? You having troubles over there? No, ma'am, Emma lied, feeling Ranger's steady warmth against her leg. Just trying to learn the history of our house. The old woman studied her for a long moment. You remind me of my Eleanor always poking into things, asking questions nobody wanted to answer. Her voice softened. Just be careful, child. Some stones are better left unturned. Sheriff Brooks pulled into the Municipal Records Building in the neighboring county seat. After signing in, he was led to a windowless room filled with filing cabinets and the musty smell of forgotten paperwork. Financial records for Oak Ridge Elementary going back 10 years, the clerk explained, gesturing to several thick binders. Though I can't imagine what's so interesting about a small-town school budget, Brooks smiled thinly. Just following up on some discrepancies. Routine audit. For 3 hours, he combed through line items and bank statements, looking for anything unusual. On the surface, everything appeared legitimate until he reached the private donations section. Over the past 8 years, Oak Ridge Elementary had received substantial anonymous donations, all processed through the same offshore account. The timing of the donations matched perfectly with the disappearances. Brooks photographed the relevant pages, his police instincts screaming. This wasn't just about missing children anymore. This had the hallmarks of human trafficking, a network with enough resources to set up offshore accounts and make untraceable payments. As he drove back to Oak Ridge, his phone rang. Emma's voice came through, breathless and urgent. Sheriff Brooks Ranger keeps trying to go to the school. He almost pulled my arm off when we walked past it this morning. Brooks gripped the steering wheel tighter. Stay away from the school, Emma. Promise me. But there's something there. I know it. Ranger. Emma, he interrupted firmly. This is dangerous. More dangerous than you understand. Promise me you'll stay home and keep Ranger with you. After extracting her reluctant promise, Brooks hung up and dialed his deputy. Tom, I need you to pull the building plans for Oak Ridge Elementary. Every version, including the original blueprints from the 1950s. Something wrong, Sheriff? Just being thorough, and Tom, keep this between us for now. Angela Winters stirred sugar into her coffee, watching her daughter through the kitchen window. Emma sat on the back steps, one arm draped over Ranger's broad shoulders, both staring at something beyond the fence line. She's gotten so attached to that dog, Angela said, turning to Principal Chambers, who sat at her kitchen table. I hardly recognize her sometimes. Before we moved here, she barely spoke after the divorce. Chambers nodded sympathetically. Children are remarkably resilient with the right support. That's why I think our summer enrichment program would be perfect for Emma. Small group setting, specialized attention, and a chance to make friends before the school year begins. It sounds wonderful, Angela admitted. And I've been worried about leaving her alone so much while I'm at work. The program runs weekdays from 9 to 3. We even provide lunch. Chambers smiled, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. We have 6 children enrolled already. Angela skimmed the brochure. Academic enrichment, field trips, science projects. When does it start? Monday, though Emma could come tomorrow for orientation if you'd like. I'm doing some preparation at the school, and I could show her around, introduce her to one of our instructors." From the backyard came Ranger's sudden, sharp bark. Angela glanced out to see the German shepherd standing rigidly at the fence, his fur bristling as he stared toward the street. "That dog is so protective," she said. "Dr. Collins says it's common in rescue animals, especially ones with trauma." Chambers' smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Yes. Well, sometimes overprotective animals can be problematic. Has he shown any aggression?" "Only when—" Angela paused, remembering how Ranger had growled when Chambers arrived earlier. "He's still adjusting, I suppose." "Indeed." Chambers stood, collecting his briefcase. "Think about the program, and let me know. Emma has such potential. It would be a shame to see it wasted." After he left, Angela found Emma still sitting with Ranger in the backyard. "Principal Chambers has invited you to a summer program at the school," she began. To her surprise, Emma's face darkened. "I don't want to go." "Emma, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity. There'll be other kids, activities." "I said no." Emma's vehemence was startling. I don't like him." "Mom." Angela sighed, attributing the reaction to typical preteen moodiness. "We'll talk about it later. Mrs. Patterson invited us for dinner tonight." The Pattersons' dining room felt frozen in time-heavy oak furniture, lace doilies, and faded photographs covering every surface. Mr. Patterson, a retired railroad engineer in his 80s, dominated the conversation with stories of Oak Ridge's past while his wife served pot roast and mashed potatoes. "This town's changed," he declared, passing the gravy boat to Angela. "Used to be you knew everybody. Nowadays, there's all sorts of strangers moving through." "Harold," Mrs. Patterson chided, "Angela and Emma aren't strangers. They're neighbors." The old man harumphed. "Wasn't talking about them. Talking about those fancy cars that come through at night. Black windows so you can't see who's inside." Emma's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What cars?" "Mr. Patterson. The ones that go to the school, middle of the night sometimes, carrying who knows what." Mrs. Patterson rolled her eyes. "Harold has insomnia. Sits at the window watching traffic half the night." "Just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm senile," he retorted. "Started happening about 8 years ago. Right after they renovated the east wing of the school." Emma exchanged glances with her mother, who looked embarrassed by the turn in conversation. "Did you ever tell Sheriff Brooks?" Emma asked. "Told him plenty. He took notes real polite-like. Then nothing happened." Mr. Patterson stabbed a piece of pot roast. "Same as when I told him about the tunnels." "Harold, not this again." Mrs. Patterson sighed. "What tunnels?" Emma pressed, ignoring her mother's warning look. "The ones under the school. Been there since the Cold War bomb shelters. They called 'em. Connected half the town back in the day. Most got sealed up in the 70s, but a few stayed open." "How do you know about them?" Angela asked, despite herself. "Helped build 'em. Tunnels were my specialty in the Corps of Engineers." Oak Ridge Elementary had the main access point, big reinforced door in the basement, led to a whole network. He shook his head. "Course, nobody wants to hear about that now. Town council acts like they never existed." Later, as they walked home under a sky spattered with stars. Angela apologized. Mr. Patterson gets carried away with his stories. Half of them are probably imagination. But Emma wasn't listening. Her mind was racing, connecting pieces of a puzzle too terrible to contemplate. The next morning, Sheriff Brooks spread blueprints across his desk while Deputy Tom Reyes compared them to modern schematics of Oak Ridge Elementary. "Look at this," Brooks said, pointing to the original plans. "Extensive tunnel system connecting the school to the old town hall, the bank, and several private residences, part of the civil defense program in the 50s. But they're not on any current plans," Reyes noted. "Officially decommissioned in 1974, supposedly filled in with concrete." Brooks traced a route with his finger. "Except this section, it connected to the Harrison property on Sycamore Lane." Reyes whistled softly. "Tyler Harrison's house? You think there's a connection?" "I think it's too coincidental that a dog who belonged to our first missing child turns up 8 years later, leading a little girl to evidence connecting all 23 disappearances. You think Chambers is involved?" Brooks hesitated. Voicing his suspicions made them real, irrevocable. "I think we need to search the school, quietly, without alerting anyone. We'd need a warrant. And to get a warrant, we'd need more than an old dog and a box of teeth that might not even be admissible evidence." Brooks rubbed his face. "We need to catch him in the act, or find something concrete that ties him directly to the disappearances." Reyes looked troubled. "If you're right about this, those kids could be anywhere by now. Or worse." "Maybe not all of them," Brooks said. "The most recent disappearance was only 3 months ago. And those donations, they come like clockwork, always after a child goes missing, like payments." "Jesus," Reyes murmured. "We're talking about trafficking, aren't we?" Brooks nodded grimly. "I've reached out to the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force, sent them what we have so far. They're interested but need more before they can intervene. So what's our next move?" "Surveillance. I want cameras on the school, the maintenance entrances, and Chambers' house, discreet ones that won't attract attention. And in the meantime," Brooks stared at the blueprints, at the web of tunnels that might still exist beneath Oak Ridge. "In the meantime, we pray we're wrong." Emma couldn't sleep. She'd tried everything counting backward from 100, reading her most boring textbook, even the deep breathing exercises her counselor had taught her after the divorce. Nothing helped. Her mind kept circling back to Mr. Patterson's tunnels, to Ranger's obsession with the school, to the box of teeth buried in what was once Principal Chambers' yard. Moonlight spilled through her window, casting Ranger's sleeping form in silver. The German shepherd's ears twitched as he dreamed, soft whimpers escaping his throat. Emma wondered what he saw in those dreams. Tyler, the other missing children, whatever horrors had given him the scar across his muzzle. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Emma froze, listening intently. Her mother's steady breathing continued from the next room she hadn't stirred. Another creak, closer to her door. Ranger woke instantly, his body tensing as he rose to his feet. A low growl built in his chest, barely audible but vibrating with threat. Emma slipped from her bed and pressed herself against the wall beside her door, heart hammering. The doorknob turned slowly. Ranger launched himself forward, barking furiously as the door swung open. There was a startled curse, then the sound of running footsteps. By the time Emma reached the hallway, the back door was swinging open, a dark figure disappearing into the night. Her mother appeared, hair disheveled from sleep. "What on earth? Someone was in the house," Emma gasped. "They tried to come into my room." Angela's face went white. She grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. Outside, Ranger's barking continued, tracking something or someone across their yard. Sheriff Brooks arrived within minutes, his expression grim as he examined the forced back door. "Looks like they used a credit card or something similar to slip the lock. Professional job." "Why would anyone break in?" Angela asked, holding Emma close. "We don't have anything valuable." Brooks exchanged a glance with Emma. "Mrs. Winters, there's something I need to discuss with you, about Emma's discovery and some concerns I have about Principal Chambers." As the adults talked in hushed voices in the kitchen, Emma slipped outside to find Ranger. The German shepherd stood at the fence line, staring toward the distant silhouette of Oak Ridge Elementary, just visible on the hill above town. "You know, don't you?" she whispered, kneeling beside him. "You know what's happening to those kids." Ranger whined, pressing his muzzle against her hand. In the moonlight, his eyes seemed almost human in their understanding. The next day, Sheriff Brooks stationed a deputy outside the Winters home and installed additional locks on all the doors and windows. Angela, pale and shaken after learning about the box Emma had found, called in sick to work. "I can't believe I invited that man into our house," she said, watching as Brooks checked the security of their front windows. "I was going to send Emma to his program. I practically handed her to him." "You couldn't have known," Brooks assured her. "Chambers has spent years cultivating his reputation. He's on the town council, the Chamber of Commerce, the library board. Everyone trusts him. What happens now? We build our case carefully. One wrong move and he could destroy evidence or worse." Brooks lowered his voice. "The FBI is sending an agent tomorrow. Until then, you and Emma stay home. Doors locked." But as morning stretched into afternoon, Emma grew increasingly restless. Ranger paced the house, whining whenever he passed a window facing the school. Something was happening, something urgent that the adults couldn't or wouldn't see. When her mother finally dozed off on the couch, exhausted from the night's events, Emma made her decision. She scribbled a quick note. "Taking Ranger for a short walk. Back soon. Love, Emma," and slipped out the front door past the deputy who was occupied with a phone call in his cruiser. "Come on, boy," she whispered to Ranger. "Show me what you've been trying to tell us." The German shepherd led her without hesitation, not toward the school's main entrance, but around the perimeter to a maintenance access door half hidden by overgrown shrubbery. The door was old and rusted, its padlock new and gleaming in contrast. Emma hesitated, common sense warring with the certainty that answers lay beyond. Ranger whined urgently, pawing at the ground beside the door where the earth appeared recently disturbed, kneeling. Emma scraped away loose soil to reveal a small opening just large enough for a child to squeeze through. A cold draft emanated from the darkness beyond, carrying a musty, abandoned smell. "Is this how they took Tyler?" she whispered. Ranger's answering whine was all the confirmation she needed, heart pounding. Emma took out her phone and texted Sheriff Brooks. "At school, found tunnel entrance. Ranger led me, SE maintenance door." Then, Taking a deep breath, she lay flat and began to wriggle through the opening, Ranger watching anxiously from above. She'd just managed to get her shoulders through when hands grabbed her ankles from behind. "Well, well," came Principal Chambers' voice, terrifyingly calm. "Curious little Emma, always asking questions, always watching, just like your dog." Emma screamed, but the sound was lost in Ranger's sudden, furious barking as he lunged at Chambers. There was a sharp crack, a sound Emma recognized from action movies but had never heard in real life. A gunshot. Ranger yelped, then fell silent. "No!" Emma cried, twisting desperately as Chambers dragged her backward through the opening. "Animals are so predictable," he said, his cultured voice at odds with the cruel grip on her ankles. "So are children. You all think you're cleverer than you are." As Emma emerged fully from the tunnel, she saw Ranger lying motionless on the ground, blood darkening his tan fur. Chambers hauled her to her feet, one hand covering her mouth, the other pressing a small pistol against her ribs. "We're going to take a little tour of my facility," he said pleasantly, as if inviting her to a school assembly. "Since you're so interested in where those other children went, then we'll decide what to do with you." Principal Edward Chambers marched Emma through the tunnel, one hand gripping her arm with bruising force, the other holding the pistol steady against her back. The passage was low and narrow, forcing even Emma to duck her head in places. Naked bulbs hung at irregular intervals, casting harsh pools of light amid long stretches of shadow. Fascinating history. These tunnels, Chambers remarked conversationally, as if conducting a field trip rather than an abduction. Built during the height of Cold War paranoia, the school board wanted them sealed in the 70s, but I convinced them to merely restrict access, historical preservation. I said, they never asked why I was so interested. Emma remained silent, her mind racing between terror and desperate calculation. Ranger, was he dead or merely wounded? Had Sheriff Brooks received her text? How long before her mother realized she was missing? "Nothing to say," Chambers prodded. "You've been quite the little detective these past weeks. I expected more questions." "Why?" Emma finally asked, her voice smaller than she intended. "Why are you taking children?" Chambers chuckled, the sound echoing unnervingly through the confined space. "Economics, my dear. Simple supply and demand. There are people in this world who want children, specific types of children, and will pay handsomely for them." Emma's stomach churned. "You're selling them like property." "Such a simplistic term. I prefer specialized adoption placement. Some go to wealthy families unable to adopt through conventional channels due to, shall we say, past indiscretions. Others go to organizations with particular training needs." "Training for what?" Emma whispered, though part of her didn't want to know. "That depends on the child's aptitudes. Tyler Harrison, for instance, showed remarkable potential, highly intelligent, physically coordinated, with an extraordinary pain tolerance. Very valuable combination." The casual way he discussed Tyler made Emma's skin crawl. This wasn't a man with a conscience or remorse. This was someone who viewed children as commodities, their worth measured in dollars rather than humanity. The tunnel began to slope downward, the air growing damper and cooler, after what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 15 minutes. They reached a heavy metal door. Chambers punched a code into a keypad, and the door swung inward with a hydraulic hiss. "Welcome to my processing center," he announced. pushing Emma through. Temporary accommodations before transport to more permanent situations. The room beyond was clinically white and windowless, resembling a hospital ward more than a prison. 6 small cells lined one wall, each with a cot, toilet, and sink. 3 contained huddled forms that stirred at their entrance. "New arrival? Children?" Chambers called out cheerfully. "Say hello to Emma." Pale faces appeared at the bars, 2 boys and a girl, none older than 12. Their expressions showed neither hope nor curiosity, just a dull resignation that was more horrifying than fear would have been. "These 3 are scheduled for transport tomorrow night," Chambers explained, steering Emma toward an empty cell. "You, however, present a complication. The sheriff knows too much now, thanks to your meddling. We'll need to accelerate our timetable and relocate the operation." Emma's thoughts raced ahead. If Chambers was planning to move everything, that meant destroying evidence and possibly eliminating witnesses. Her life expectancy had just shortened dramatically. "They'll find us," she said with more confidence than she felt. "Sheriff Brooks knows about the tunnels now." "Does he?" Chambers smiled thinly. "Even if he received your text, which I doubt given the poor reception near the maintenance entrance, he has no idea about the extent of the network. There are access points throughout Oak Ridge that don't appear on any official blueprint. By the time he navigates the labyrinth, we'll be long gone." He unlocked an empty cell and shoved Emma inside, the metal door clanging shut with terrible finality. "Make yourself comfortable. I need to make some calls to arrange earlier transportation." As Chambers disappeared through another door at the far end of the room, Emma pressed herself against the bars, trying to see the other children more clearly. "Hey," she whispered. "I'm Emma. What are your names?" The children exchanged wary glances. Finally, the girl spoke, her voice hoarse as if from disuse. "I'm Lily. That's Marcus and Ethan." "Lily Parnell?" Emma asked, recognizing the name from the list. "From Westfield." The girl's eyes widened slightly. "How did you know that?" "I found something evidence about all the missing kids. That's why I'm here." Emma gripped the bars tighter. "How long have you been here?" "Don't know exactly," Lily murmured. "Weeks. Maybe they keep moving us around." "It's been 3 months for me," the smaller boy Marcus added. "I think it's hard to tell time down here." Emma's heart sank. If these children had been held captive for months with no one finding them, what chance did they have now? She thought of Ranger, lying bleeding on the ground above them, and fought back tears. "The man who took you," she pressed. "Has he said where you're going?" The older boy, Ethan, spoke for the first time. "Different places. They evaluate us first, then decide. Lily's going to some special school for girls. Marcus and I." He trailed off, his young face hardening. Somewhere else. The matter-of-fact way he discussed their fates suggested they'd overheard more than Chambers realized. Emma was about to ask another question when the far door opened again, and Chambers returned, accompanied by a tall, broad-shouldered man in a delivery uniform. "Change of plans," Chambers announced. "We're moving tonight. Mr. Rivera will take the boys now, and I'll handle the girls personally tomorrow morning." He handed a manila envelope to the man. All the documentation is in order. The usual drop point. Rivera nodded, his face expressionless as he unlocked the boys' cells. Neither child resisted as he fastened zip ties around their wrists and led them toward a different door than the tunnel entrance. "What about Tyler?" Emma called desperately. "Tyler Harrison. Where did you send him?" Chambers turned to her with mild surprise. "Still fixated on that. Are we? Tyler was one of my first placements, a learning experience. You might say, that ridiculous dog complicated things. It's why I started taking children without pets." "Is he alive?" Emma demanded. "Almost certainly not," Chambers replied with clinical detachment. "His particular placement had a high attrition rate. Military applications. You understand? Only the exceptional ones survive the training." Emma felt sick. This man had stolen Tyler's life and many others with no more concern than if he were discussing inventory at a store. Her fear began to crystallize into anger, hot and clarifying. "Sheriff Brooks will find this place," she said steadily. "He knows about the tunnels, about the teeth, about everything." Something flickered in Chambers' eyes, the first hint of uncertainty she'd seen. "Unlikely, but even if he did, there's nothing to connect me directly to any of this. The facility is registered to a shell corporation, the transport vehicles are untraceable, and by tomorrow it will all be gone, including you and Miss Parnell." He checked his watch. "I have preparations to make. Sit tight, ladies. It won't be long now." After he left, locking the main door behind him, Emma immediately began examining her cell. The bars were solid, the lock modern and secure, nothing like the flimsy padlock on the metal box in her yard. "It's no use," Lily said dully. "I've tried everything. There's no way out." Emma wasn't listening. Her attention had fixed on the ventilation grate near the ceiling of her cell, small, but possibly large enough for someone her size to squeeze through. "Lily, does your cell have a vent like this one?" The other girl looked up, following Emma's gaze. "Yes, but it's screwed in. I tried loosening the screws with my fingernails, but they're too tight." Emma felt in her pockets, hoping against hope that she had something, anything that could serve as a tool. Her fingers closed around the house key she always carried, its teeth sharp and metallic. "I might be able to unscrew mine," she whispered. "If I can get into the vent system, maybe I can find a way to open your cell." "Even if you did, we can't get past the main door. It has an electronic lock with a keypad." "One problem at a time," Emma replied, dragging her cot beneath the vent. Standing on tiptoe, she could just reach the screws with her key. Each turn was painfully slow, the metal biting into her palm, but gradually the first screw began to loosen. Sheriff Brooks burst through the station doors, his face ashen. "Emma's missing," he announced to Deputy Reyes. "Angela just called. She left a note about walking the dog, but that was over 2 hours ago." Reyes stood immediately. "Any sign of the dog?" "Nothing. I've got 2 deputies canvassing the neighborhood." Brooks ran a hand through his hair. "Check my phone. Any messages from her?" Reyes picked up the sheriff's cell phone from his desk and checked. "One text. Came in about an hour ago, but didn't load properly. Poor signal, maybe." He tapped the screen. "It's from Emma's number, at school. Found tunnel entrance. Ranger led me. The rest is cut off. The school. Brooks breathed. She went to the damn school. Call for backup, everyone we've got. And get that FBI agent on the phone. We're moving now. Within 20 minutes, a tactical team had assembled in the station's back lot. The FBI agent, a serious woman named Ramirez with years of human trafficking experience, laid out the approach. "We go in quiet," she instructed. "No sirens, no lights. If Chambers is there and realizes we're coming, he might destroy evidence or worse." "What about Emma?" Brooks demanded. "And the other children, if they're there?" Agent Ramirez's expression was grim. "Finding them alive is our priority, but you need to understand, based on what you've told me, we're likely dealing with a sophisticated trafficking operation. If Chambers has been doing this for 8 years without detection, he has contingency plans and possibly armed associates." Brooks checked his weapon, a cold determination settling over him. "I've known those tunnels since I was a kid. Used to sneak in there on dares. If Emma found an entrance, I can find it too." As the team prepared to move out, Deputy Reyes called out suddenly, "Sheriff, we've got a witness, Mrs. Patterson says she saw Chambers forcing Emma into a maintenance door at the southeast corner of the school grounds. Says there was blood on the ground and the dog was nowhere in sight." Brooks's jaw tightened. If Ranger had been injured or killed trying to protect Emma, Chambers would pay for that too. The convoy moved through Oak Ridge with deliberate casualness, unmarked cars and SUVs taking different routes to avoid attracting attention. As they approached the school, Brooks directed them to a wooded area that would shield their approach from any surveillance cameras Chambers might have installed. "The maintenance entrance should be through those bushes," he said, pointing to an overgrown section of the school's perimeter fence. "Everyone stay low and move quiet." Agent Ramirez organized the team into 2 groups, one to secure the tunnel entrance, the other to cover the school's main building in case Chambers tried to escape that way. Brooks led the tunnel team, his flashlight revealing the disturbed earth beside the maintenance door, and his heart sank a dark stain that could only be blood. "Looks like something was dragged from here," Reyes observed, pointing to marks in the soil leading away from the blood. Brooks followed the trail into the bushes and froze. There, partially concealed by foliage, lay Ranger's still form. The German shepherd's fur was matted with dried blood around his shoulder, a fresh wound layered over the old one that had barely healed. "Ah, Christ," Brooks muttered, kneeling beside the dog. To his shock, Ranger's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. "He's alive. Get Dr. Collins here now." While one deputy made the call, Brooks examined the maintenance door. The padlock appeared intact, but closer inspection revealed it was merely closed through the hasp, not actually locked. Someone had been here recently. "Ready?" he asked, drawing his weapon. At Ramirez's nod, Brooks carefully removed the padlock and eased the door open. A dark tunnel stretched before them, dimly lit by widely spaced bulbs. The air that wafted out was cool and dank, carrying a faint antiseptic smell beneath the mustiness. "This wasn't on any of the blueprints we saw," Reyes whispered. "Chambers must have modified them." Ramirez replied, "Common tactic in trafficking operations create hidden spaces known only to the operators." They advanced slowly, communication limited to hand signals. The tunnel sloped downward, branching occasionally. At each junction, Brooks hesitated, trying to recall his childhood explorations. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, they reached a sophisticated door with an electronic keypad. "This is new," Brooks murmured. "Nothing like this existed when I was a kid." Ramirez examined the lock. "High-end security system. We could try to breach it, but that would alert whoever's inside." "Can you bypass it?" The agent shook her head. "Not without specialized equipment. We'd need to—" She was interrupted by a faint sound from the other side of the door, a child's voice, high with fear. Brooks recognized it instantly. "That's Emma," he said, all caution evaporating. "She's in there." Without waiting for Ramirez's approval, he pounded on the metal door. "Emma, it's Sheriff Brooks. Are you in there?" There was a moment of silence. Then, "Sheriff, he's coming back any minute. He's taking us away tonight." Brooks turned to Ramirez. "Breach it. Now." The agent hesitated only briefly before nodding to one of her team members, who stepped forward with a compact battering ram. It took 3 powerful swings before the door gave way with a screech of protesting metal. Brooks burst through, weapon raised, into a stark white room lined with cells. Emma stood pressed against the bars of one, her face tear-stained but determined. In another cell, a young girl, Lily Parnell, Brooks realized with a jolt cowered on a cot. "Where is he?" Brooks demanded, rushing to Emma's cell. "Where's Chambers?" "He left to get something," Emma said rapidly. "But he'll be back. He's moving us tonight. He already sent the boys away with someone else." Ramirez was already on her radio, alerting the second team. 2 male miners in transit, possibly in a delivery vehicle. Suspect Chambers still in the building. All units converge on the main structure. As Brooks worked to unlock Emma's cell, a door at the far end of the room burst open. Principal Edward Chambers stood frozen in the doorway, a laptop bag in one hand and car keys in the other. For a split second, his carefully cultivated mask of respectability slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Then he slammed the door and disappeared. "He's running!" Brooks shouted, finally getting Emma's cell open. "Ramirez, get the girls out of here. Reyes with me." As the FBI agent moved to free Lily, Brooks and Reyes sprinted toward the door Chambers had vanished through, weapons drawn. The hunt was on, and Brooks swore silently that this time there would be no escape for the man who had terrorized their community for 8 long years. The ambulance lights bathed Emma's face in alternating red and blue as the paramedic checked her vitals, wrapped in a silver thermal blanket. She sat on the tailgate, watching the chaos unfold around Oak Ridge Elementary. Police cruisers, FBI vehicles, and even news vans from neighboring counties formed a perimeter around the school, their headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. "Your blood pressure's a little low, but that's normal after what you've been through," the paramedic said gently. "Any dizziness, nausea?" Emma shook her head, her attention fixed on the animal carrier being loaded into Dr. Collins' truck. "Is Ranger going to be okay?" The paramedic followed her gaze. "Dr. Collins is the best vet in 3 counties. If anyone can help him, she can." But Emma had seen the wound a clean shot through Ranger's already injured shoulder. The amount of blood, the labored breathing, the way his body had felt unnaturally heavy when Sheriff Brooks carried him out of the bushes. Ranger had fought to protect her. just as he must have fought for Tyler all those years ago. "He has to be okay," she whispered. "He's been trying to tell someone the truth for 8 years." Her mother pushed through the crowd of officials, her face tear-streaked and pale. Without a word, Angela wrapped Emma in a fierce hug, as if trying to physically shield her from what had already happened. "Mom, I'm sorry I snuck out," Emma began. "Don't," Angela whispered against her hair. "Don't apologize. I'm the one who should be sorry. I didn't listen when you tried to tell me about Chambers." They clung to each other as FBI agents emerged from the school, escorting a handcuffed Chambers to a waiting vehicle. The principal's immaculate appearance had crumbled, his silver hair disheveled, his expensive suit torn at one sleeve, but his expression remained coldly composed, as if his arrest were merely an inconvenient scheduling error. "I want to see them take him away," Emma said firmly, sliding off the ambulance tailgate despite the paramedics' protests. Angela hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but then we're going straight to the hospital for a full checkup." They joined the small crowd of law enforcement officials watching Chambers' procession to the transport vehicle. As he passed, his eyes met Emma's cold, calculating, utterly without remorse. A shiver ran through her, but she held his gaze steadily until he was secured in the vehicle. Sheriff Brooks approached, his face haggard with exhaustion and worry. "We've secured the facility and recovered Lily Parnell, but the 2 boys, Marcus and Ethan, are still missing. Chambers isn't talking, and the man who took them had at least an hour's head start. He called him Mr. Rivera," Emma offered. "He was wearing a brown delivery uniform, like a package service." Brooks nodded. "That matches what Lily told Agent Ramirez. We've got roadblocks on all major highways and alerts at bus stations, train stations, and airports within a 100-mile radius." "Will you find them?" Angela asked quietly. The sheriff's expression tightened. "We're doing everything possible, but after 8 years and 23 children..." He didn't finish the sentence. "What about the others?" Emma asked. "The ones who disappeared before?" Brooks exchanged a glance with an approaching FBI agent, who took over the explanation. "We're processing the evidence from Chambers' office and the underground facility. There are extensive records, financial transactions, transport documents, even..." She hesitated, looking at Emma. "Even what?" Emma pressed. "Evaluations," the agent said carefully. "Detailed assessments of each child's physical and psychological attributes. It appears they were categorized based on specific requirements from buyers." The clinical description made Emma's stomach turn. She thought of Tyler Harrison, evaluated and sold like merchandise, sent somewhere with a high attrition rate. She thought of Marcus and Ethan, headed to another unknown destination with the same fate awaiting them. "I want to go home," she said suddenly, the weight of it all crushing down on her. "Please, Mom, I just want to go home." Dr. Sarah Collins worked methodically, her skilled hands moving with practiced efficiency as she extracted the bullet from Ranger's shoulder. The German shepherd lay unconscious on her surgical table, his breathing shallow but stable under anesthesia. "It's a miracle he survived the first wound on that cliff," her assistant remarked, monitoring the dog's vitals. "And now this. Talk about 9 lives." "He's a fighter," Collins agreed, dropping the extracted bullet into a metal pan. and he had something to live for. Dogs like Ranger don't give up when they have a mission. The surgery continued for another hour, cleaning the wound, repairing damaged muscle tissue, transfusing blood to replace what had been lost. When she finally stepped back, peeling off her surgical gloves, Collins felt the full weight of exhaustion settle over her. "Will he make it?" her assistant asked quietly. Collins studied the steady rise and fall of Ranger's chest, the strong but slow heartbeat on the monitor. "If he makes it through the night, his chances are good. But he's endured a lot of trauma, physical and psychological. Recovery won't be easy." She stroked Ranger's fur gently. "I'll stay with him tonight. Emma will want updates. And Sheriff Brooks needs that bullet for evidence." Alone with the sleeping dog, Collins settled into a chair beside the recovery kennel. "You did good, old boy," she murmured. "You found those children when no one else could. Tyler would be proud." In the cold sterility of the county hospital, Emma underwent a series of examinations, physical tests, blood draws, psychological evaluations. Though Chambers hadn't physically harmed her, the doctors were thorough, explaining that trauma could manifest in many ways. "I'm fine," she insisted after the third doctor asked about her emotional state. "I just want to know about Ranger and the other kids." Her mother, who hadn't left her side since the rescue, squeezed her hand. "Doctor, Collins promised to call as soon as there's news about Ranger. And Sheriff Brooks will update us about the investigation." Emma nodded, but the knot in her stomach tightened. The hospital room felt too similar to the cell where she'd been held, sterile, impersonal, confining. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Chambers' face, heard his clinical descriptions of children's placements, felt the terror of those moments when Ranger lay bleeding on the ground. "What happens now?" she asked as a nurse took yet another blood pressure reading. Angela brushed the hair from Emma's forehead. "We take it one day at a time. Sweetheart, you're safe. That's what matters most." But Emma knew it wasn't that simple. Ranger fighting for his life. Marcus and Ethan still missing. 20 other children scattered across who knew where. Some possibly still alive, but suffering unimaginable circumstances. And Tyler Harrison, the boy whose disappearance had started it all, almost certainly dead, according to Chambers. Her mother's phone rang, shattering the hospital room's quiet. Angela answered, her expression shifting from weariness to shock as she listened. "Who is it?" Emma whispered. Angela covered the mouthpiece. "Sheriff Brooks. They found something in Chambers' records about Tyler Harrison." Emma sat up straighter, her heart pounding. What did they find?" Her mother listened for another long moment, then slowly lowered the phone, her face pale with disbelief. "They think he might be alive. Emma, Tyler Harrison might still be alive." As night settled over Oak Ridge County, a heavy silence descended on the community. Porch lights blazed on every street, symbols of vigilance against a darkness that had operated in their midst for 8 years. Parents held their children closer, checked locks twice, and whispered reassurances that monsters couldn't get them now. But in Sheriff Brooks' office, the stark reality of Chambers' operation spread across evidence boards and computer screens. Financial records, transport documents, photographs of children, including many who had never been reported missing. The trafficking network extended far beyond Oak Ridge, with connections to organizations in at least 6 countries. "This is bigger than we thought," Agent Ramirez said, surveying the evidence. Much bigger. Brooks nodded grimly, studying a map where red pins marked confirmed transport locations. And we've only scratched the surface. How many more chambers are out there? How many more children? The question hung in the air, unanswerable and devastating. For every child they might save, dozens more remained lost in a system designed to make them disappear. And for those they did recover, the road ahead would be long and painful, healing wounds, both visible and hidden, rebuilding lives shattered by cruelty. As if echoing this thought, Deputy Reyes entered with a somber expression. Just got word from the hospital. Emma's in shock. The doctors want to keep her overnight for observation. Brooks sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. And Ranger, still in surgery. Dr. Collins says it's touch and go. In the quiet of his office, Brooks confronted the bitter truth that had haunted him throughout his career sometimes. Victory came too late and at too high a cost. Even if they dismantled Chambers' entire operation, even if they rescued every surviving child, the damage was already done. Some wounds never fully heal. Some losses can never be recovered. Some nightmares never completely fade. The interrogation room at the FBI field office in Indianapolis was deliberately austere, bare walls, fluorescent lighting, a metal table bolted to the floor. Edward Chambers sat with perfect posture, his hands folded neatly before him, as if attending a board meeting rather than facing multiple federal charges. Across the table, Agent Ramirez laid out photographs of children, 23 faces of varying ages, each one reported missing over the past 8 years. The oldest photograph, slightly faded at the edges, showed a smiling 8-year-old boy with unruly red hair and a missing front tooth. Tyler Harrison stared up from the glossy paper, frozen in time. "Let's start with Tyler," Ramirez said, tapping the photograph. "Where is he now?" Chambers regarded the image with clinical detachment. "As I explained to the little girl, Tyler's placement had a high attrition rate. The odds of his survival were minimal." "That's not what your records indicate," Ramirez countered, sliding a printed document across the table. "According to your own files, Tyler Harrison was transported to a facility in Eastern Europe designated as Training Center Alpha. Annual reports show he was alive as recently as 14 months ago." A flicker of surprise crossed Chambers' face before his mask of indifference returned. "Paperwork can be misleading. Children in these programs are assigned identification numbers, not names. Easy to mix them up." "We're not mixed up," Ramirez said coldly. "The boy designated as Subject 1A matches Tyler's DNA profile, which we obtained from the Harrison family. He's alive, Mr. Chambers, and we want to know exactly where he is." For the first time, uncertainty crept into Chambers' expression. He hadn't anticipated this level of intelligence gathering in the short time since his arrest. His mind calculated rapidly, weighing options and potential bargaining chips. "Perhaps we can come to an arrangement," he finally said, leaning forward slightly. "I have information that could lead to the recovery of several children, including Tyler Harrison. In exchange, I would expect certain considerations regarding my sentencing." Ramirez's expression remained impassive. "You're facing 23 counts of kidnapping, human trafficking, and conspiracy charges that carry multiple life sentences. What exactly do you think you're bargaining with? Information, Chambers replied smoothly. Names, locations, the entire network. Without my cooperation, you might find some of the children. Eventually, with it, you could dismantle the entire operation. The agent studied him silently, then gathered her documents and stood. We'll take your offer under advisement. In the meantime, you should know that we've already located and intercepted the vehicle transporting Marcus Chan and Ethan Doyle. Miss Rivera is being quite cooperative. As she reached the door, Chambers called after her, his composure finally cracking. Wait, there's something you don't understand. These aren't just random abductions. There's a system, a purpose. The children are selected for specific attributes: intelligence, physical capabilities, psychological resilience. They're valuable. Ramirez turned back, disgust evident in her eyes. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Chambers. They're not valuable. They're priceless. And they're not commodities, they're children. Emma sat in Sheriff Brooks' office, her mother beside her, as Brooks explained what they'd learned from Chambers' files. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and though the physical evidence of her ordeal had faded, Emma still jumped at sudden noises and woke gasping from nightmares. According to the documents we recovered, Tyler Harrison was transported to a training facility in Moldova. Brooks explained gently, "It's a small country in Eastern Europe." "What kind of training facility?" Angela asked, her hand tightening around Emma's. Brooks hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The records suggest it was designed to train children for specialized security operations, military-adjacent work." "You mean like child soldiers?" Emma asked bluntly. The sheriff's expression confirmed her guess. "Something like that. Yeah, but the important thing is, we believe Tyler is still alive. The FBI is working with international authorities to locate and recover him, along with any other children at the facility." Emma processed this information, trying to reconcile it with what Chambers had told her. He said Tyler probably didn't survive, that the place had a high attrition rate. "Chambers lied about many things," Brooks replied. "He's now cooperating with federal authorities in exchange for sentencing considerations. The information he's providing has already led to raids on similar operations in 3 states. "Will they find all the children?" Emma asked, already knowing the answer. Brooks' expression softened with regret. "Some of them, hopefully. But after 8 years, many will be difficult to trace. Some may have been moved multiple times, given new identities, or worse." The unspoken reality hung in the air that worse might mean children who hadn't survived their ordeal, whose remains might never be recovered, whose families would never have closure. "What about Ranger?" Emma asked, changing the subject to something she could bear to think about. "Can I see him yet?" "Dr. Collins says he's stable but still critical," Brooks answered. "Maybe tomorrow, if his condition improves." As they left the sheriff's office, Emma noticed a map pinned to the evidence board, red markers indicating locations across the globe. Each marker potentially represented a child from Oak Ridge or surrounding communities' stolen lives scattered like seeds in the wind. "Sheriff," she said suddenly, turning back, "if they find Tyler, will he remember Ranger?" Brooks considered the question thoughtfully. 8 years is a long time, especially for a child who's been through trauma. But some bonds run deeper than memory. I've seen it in missing persons cases, before people recognizing things they don't consciously remember. Emma nodded, satisfied with the answer. If anyone could maintain a connection across time and distance, it would be Tyler and Ranger. After all, Ranger had never stopped searching, never stopped trying to expose the truth. In the veterinary clinic's recovery room, Dr. Collins checked Ranger's vitals for the 5th time that morning. The German Shepherd's condition had stabilized overnight, his breathing stronger, his heartbeat regular. The transfused blood had done its work, replenishing what he'd lost, and the antibiotics were preventing infection in his wound. "You're quite the miracle, aren't you?" Collins murmured, gently stroking his fur. "2 gunshot wounds in a month, and you're still hanging on." Ranger's eyes fluttered open briefly, recognition flickering in their amber depths, before exhaustion pulled him back under. But that momentary awareness was enough a positive sign that his brain function remained intact despite the trauma and blood loss. Collins updated her notes, then called Sheriff Brooks with the cautiously optimistic news. Ranger wasn't out of danger yet, but his chances improved with each passing hour. Given his age and the extent of his injuries, recovery would be slow and potentially incomplete. He might always carry a limp, might never regain full use of his injured shoulder, but he would live. And sometimes, survival itself was victory enough. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. In the middle of the night, Agent Ramirez called Sheriff Brooks at 2 a.m., her voice tight with controlled excitement. "We've confirmed Tyler Harrison's location," she reported. "A compound outside Chisinau, Moldova's capital. Satellite imagery shows approximately 20 adolescents on the premises, matching the age profiles of children taken from across the United States and Canada." Brooks sat up in bed, instantly alert. "When's the raid?" "Joint operation with Interpol and Moldovan authorities. Scheduled for 0600 their time. That's 11 p.m. our time tomorrow." "The Harrisons. Being notified now. We're arranging transportation for them to meet us at the field office in Indianapolis. If the raid is successful, they'll be able to video conference with Tyler immediately." After hanging up, Brooks stared at the ceiling, emotions warring within him. Hope that Tyler and others might finally come home. Rage at the system that had trafficked them. Grief for those who would never return, and underlying it all, a gnawing question: how had this happened in his town, under his watch, for 8 long years? The answer was as simple as it was devastating. No one had connected the dots because the dots had been deliberately scattered. No one had recognized the pattern because Chambers had ensured there appeared to be no pattern. Children from different schools, different neighborhoods, different family backgrounds, their only common factor hidden in sealed files at Oak Ridge Elementary, where Chambers had methodically identified and evaluated potential candidates based on criteria only he fully understood. Dawn found Brooks at his desk, reviewing the evidence once more. Chambers' cooperation had revealed a trafficking network more extensive than anyone had imagined, a global operation with tentacles reaching into legitimate businesses, government agencies, and educational institutions. The children were merely the most vulnerable victims of a system built on exploitation and profit. As the day progressed, Brooks kept the Harrisons updated without promising too much. Hope was a double-edged sword necessary for survival, but potentially devastating if unfulfilled. By evening, he gathered Emma, Angela, and Dr. Collins at the veterinary clinic, where Ranger had shown enough improvement to be moved to a regular recovery kennel. Together, they waited for news from Moldova, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and dread. The call came at 10:47 p.m. Agent Ramirez's voice crackled over Brooks's phone speaker, filled with restrained triumph. "Operation successful. Compound secured. 18 miners recovered, including one matching Tyler Harrison's description. Preliminary DNA confirmation expected within hours." Emma, who had been sitting beside Ranger's kennel, felt tears well in her eyes. The German shepherd stirred, as if sensing the shift in emotional energy in the room. "He's coming home," she whispered, stroking Ranger's head. "Tyler's coming home." Dr. Collins wiped away her own tears. "I've seen a lot in 30 years of veterinary practice, but never anything like this. A dog remembering for 8 years, trying to tell us what happened." "Loyalty?" Sheriff Brooks said simply. "The kind humans could learn from." As they absorbed the news, none of them noticed Ranger's subtle change, how his ears perked forward at Tyler's name, how his tail thumped weakly against the kennel floor, how his eyes seemed to hold a new light, as if a long-carried burden had finally been set down. 8 months passed, bringing autumn's crisp clarity to Oak Ridge County. The maple trees lining Main Street blazed with orange and crimson, their fallen leaves crunching beneath Emma's feet as she walked Ranger along their usual route. The German shepherd moved with a noticeable limp, his once powerful gait now measured and deliberate. But his eyes remained alert, scanning their surroundings with vigilant intensity. "Slow down, old boy," Emma murmured, as Ranger paused to sniff a familiar fence post. "We've got all afternoon." At 10 years old, Ranger was considered elderly for his breed, his muzzle now frosted with white. The 2 gunshot wounds had left permanent damage, a stiffness in his shoulder that worsened in cold weather, occasional phantom pain that made him whimper in his sleep. But to Emma, these scars only made him more precious, testaments to his courage and determination. They rounded the corner onto Sycamore Lane, passing the Harrison house where lights glowed warmly in the early evening. Emma waved to Mrs. Harrison, who stood arranging pumpkins on the front porch. The woman smiled and waved back, her face fuller and more relaxed than it had been when they'd first met months ago. "Should we stop and say hello?" Emma asked Ranger. The dog's tail wagged once his version of enthusiastic agreement. Since Tyler's return 3 months ago, Ranger had developed an uncanny sense of the teenager's schedule, often leading Emma past the Harrison house precisely when Tyler would be arriving home from therapy sessions or tutor appointments. Mrs. Harrison greeted them at the gate. "Perfect timing," she said. "Tyler just got back from Dr. Winter's office. He's in the backyard with his father." Emma smiled at the mention of her mother. After the events at Oak Ridge Elementary, Angela Winters had returned to school to complete her long-postponed psychology degree, specializing in trauma recovery for children. Though she wasn't Tyler's primary therapist, that would have been professionally inappropriate given their connection, she consulted on his case and others like it. "Is it okay if we go back?" Emma asked. "Of course, honey. You and Ranger are always welcome." The Harrisons' backyard had been transformed in recent months. What was once a standard suburban lawn now featured raised garden beds, a meditation area with wind chimes, and a comfortable seating area centered around a fire pit. The changes reflected the family's new priorities, creating a healing space where Tyler could reconnect with nature and feel secure. Tyler sat beside his father, both focused on repairing a wooden birdhouse. At 16, Tyler Harrison bore little resemblance to the laughing 8-year-old from missing person posters. He was tall and lean, with the same red hair but sharper features, his movements precise and economical, the physical scars visible on his forearms and disappearing beneath his shirt collar told only part of the story. The rest was written in his watchful eyes, in the way he positioned himself to always face doorways, in how he flinched at sudden movements. But today, working beside his father in the golden afternoon light, he looked almost at peace. Ranger announced their arrival with a soft woof. Tyler looked up, his serious expression softening at the sight of the German shepherd. Without a word, he set aside his tools and knelt on the grass, arms open. Ranger limped forward, pressing himself against Tyler with quiet devotion. The boy, nearly a man, now buried his face in the dog's fur, his breathing slowing to match Ranger's steady rhythm. "Hey, Emma," Mr. Harrison called softly, giving the pair their moment. "How's school going?" "Good," she replied, settling on a nearby bench. "We're doing a project on working dogs. I'm focusing on search and rescue training." Mr. Harrison smiled knowingly. Since the events of last summer, Emma had developed a passionate interest in canine training and psychology. Dr. Collins had taken her on as a junior volunteer at the veterinary clinic, and Sheriff Brooks had arranged for her to observe training sessions with the county's K-9 unit. "I've been meaning to talk to your mom about something," Mr. Harrison said. His voice lowered. "Tyler's sleeping better since Ranger started staying over on weekends. We've been thinking, well, maybe it would be good for both of them if Ranger spent more time here." Emma nodded, having anticipated this conversation. Though technically her dog now, Ranger had always belonged to Tyler in ways that transcended legal ownership. The bond between them had not only survived 8 years of separation, but had somehow deepened since their reunion. "I think that would be good," she agreed. "Ranger knows where he's needed." Across the yard, Tyler was showing Ranger his latest project, a wooden memory box where he kept tangible reminders of his recovery journey. Emma caught fragments of his quiet monologue, the kind of one-sided conversation he seemed comfortable having only with Ranger or with his therapist. "Still don't remember everything from before, but Dr. Mercer says that's normal. Started dreaming about the house on Maple Street where we used to live. Remembered that blue ball you always wanted me to throw." Such moments of unguarded speech were rare for Tyler. The psychological evaluations had revealed the extent of his conditioning, years of punishment for speaking without permission, for showing emotion, for forming attachments. The facility in Moldova had systematically worked to erase Tyler Harrison and create an obedient operative, malleable and detached. That they had not entirely succeeded was something of a miracle. The recovery of Tyler and 17 other children from the Moldovan compound had made international headlines, sparking investigations into similar operations worldwide. 6 months after the raid, over 200 children had been recovered from various facilities, with hundreds more still unaccounted for. Edward Chambers, facing multiple life sentences, continued to provide information in exchange for small privileges, extra library time, better food, occasional sunlight. For Oak Ridge County, the healing process was communal and ongoing. The elementary school had been closed permanently, its building repurposed as a community center and resource hub for families affected by trafficking. Principal Chambers' successor, a compassionate woman with a background in child psychology, had implemented new safety protocols at the relocated school, including regular welfare checks and anonymous reporting systems. The town had changed in less visible ways, too. Neighbors watched out for each other's children with newfound vigilance. Parents established walking groups to ensure no child traveled alone. Sheriff Brooks had instituted a comprehensive education program about predatory behavior and warning signs, presented in age-appropriate formats from kindergarten through high school. As the afternoon light began to fade, Tyler and Ranger joined Emma and Mr. Harrison by the fire pit. Tyler sat close to his father, their shoulders touching a form of contact he could tolerate without anxiety. Progress came in such small moments, each one a victory over the trauma that had nearly consumed him. "Dad's teaching me woodworking," Tyler said, his voice soft but steady. "We're building a special bed for Ranger, with memory foam for his shoulder." Emma smiled. "He'd like that. Dr. Collins says his arthritis will get worse as he gets older." Tyler nodded solemnly. "I'll take care of him, for as long as he needs." The unspoken truth hung between them that Ranger, already beyond the average lifespan for his breed, might not have many years left, but the German Shepherd had accomplished what seemed impossible. He had remembered, persisted, and led them to the truth that had reunited a family and saved countless other children. As darkness settled over Oak Ridge County, Mr. Harrison lit the fire pit. The flames cast dancing shadows across their faces, turning ordinary features into something mythic and timeless: a boy, a dog, a girl who had dared to listen when others wouldn't. 3 lives connected by courage, by trauma, and ultimately by healing. "Some bonds," Mrs. Harrison said, joining them with a tray of hot chocolate, "are stronger than time or distance. My grandma used to say that love leaves a trail in this world that can always be followed, if you know how to look." Emma watched as Ranger settled his head on Tyler's knee, the dog's amber eyes reflecting firelight. Perhaps Mrs. Harrison was right. Perhaps it had been love pure and uncomplicated that had sustained Ranger's memory across 8 impossible years, that had driven him to keep searching long after everyone else had given up. As stars appeared above them, Emma made a silent promise to remember this lesson for all her days, that loyalty, once given, could illuminate even the darkest paths, and that courage often wore the most unassuming disguises, like the battered body of an aging German shepherd who had never forgotten his boy. Folks, remember when neighborhoods weren't just places, but communities where everyone knew your name? Emma and Ranger's story reminds us what we've always known deep down, that sometimes the most powerful guardians among us walk on 4 legs, not 2. When that German shepherd kept digging at the same spot for 8 long years, he wasn't just being stubborn. He was showing a loyalty that puts our human promises to shame. Isn't it something how an animal can understand what matters most when the sophisticated adults miss it completely? Like many of you, I grew up in a time when we let children roam until the streetlights came on. The world has changed, but our responsibility to protect the innocent hasn't. This story touches that tender spot in our hearts where we store our greatest fears: losing a child, being powerless to help, not being believed when we know something's wrong. But it also reminds us of what we value most: courage that doesn't recognize its own limits, faith that outlasts reasonable hope, and the healing power of coming home, no matter how long the journey. In our twilight years, may we all have the wisdom to listen when others don't, and the courage to act when others won't.